All right. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to our panel on biomass fermentation. Yeah, this morning we had a really great discussion on how fermentation is helping with the sustainability of food and alternative proteins more specifically. And in this panel, we'll really dive into biomass fermentation and learn how the technology is being used not only to improve sustainability, but also cost, taste, global access to nutritious protein. And I think one hallmark of this category that I really get excited about is flexibility of the range of product applications, from whole muscle cuts to ground meat to dairy and seafood, the range of production methods from large scale fermentation tanks to smaller modular systems, and even the range of feedstocks that can be used to fuel the growth of these microorganisms. And to talk about all of this today, I'm really honored to be joined by Gavin McIntyre, the co-founder and director of business development at Atlast Food Co., Justin Whiteley, the co-founder and CTO of Meati, Thomas Jonas, the co-founder and CEO of Nature's Fynd, and then last but certainly not least, Rob Johnson, the science manager and fermentation specialist at Quorn Foods. And Rob, maybe if I can start with you. Quorn is somewhat of a veteran in this space, making alternative meat with microproteins for some years. Compared with other methods of producing alternative proteins, such as plants or cultivated technology, how is fermentation a faster, less expensive, and more sustainable production platform?
Well, in terms of faster, the fungus doubles its biomass every 6 hours. There's not many vertebrates get anywhere close to that, and so it's a really fast method of producing biomass, particularly at the large scales we employ, where we're using 150-ton fermenters. And sustainability, we've carbon footprinted all of our or all the main lines of our products, and our carbon footprint is lower, our water footprint is lower. Part of the reason of that is, if you think, we're using glucose from maize and from wheat, and when the starch is extracted, that leaves behind the protein. Our fermentation doesn't really fit all the metrics. When you see how efficient cows are at converting grain into protein, or chickens or insects is the big, all they're doing is concentrating what's already there. We sidestep all that. We leave that protein available, and then we add more. So in terms of sustainability, it's a great step forward. And more as technologies develop, we've got the opportunity to become agnostic with relation to where the carbohydrates that we use come from. And so we can be looking at not just wheat and rice and the traditional sources of starch, but also we could be moving well into a lot of areas like lignocellulosic glucose and so on. So there's massive opportunities for us to improve our already very good position. Oh, sorry. There's a delay on my computer. It's reading back to me what I've just said.
No problem. Thanks, Rob. I love the comparison with sort of fermentation as a multiplier and animals as a concentrator of proteins. Justin, maybe if I can turn to you. Meati is currently focused, but I know not exclusively, on whole muscle cut products like steak. How does fermentation allow us to do that more quickly and less costly than other methods to produce those types of meat products?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks also for having me. I'm very humbled to be here. So using mycelium in general, it actually naturally self-assembles itself into long microscopic fibers. And so at Meati, what we're doing, we're aligning these fibers together without any extrusion processes. And so now, having aligned microscopic fibers, we have essentially mimicked muscle fiber. That's essentially the goal that a lot of other alternative proteins are trying to achieve through food processing, creating fibers by extruding preformed proteins. And mycelium does this without us needing to process it at all. It's incredibly fascinating, incredibly efficient, essentially, self-assembling material. And now we're able to take mycelium, change the alignment and density of those fibers. That's how you're able to start getting the different types of textures that we're used to from animal sources. So that's how you can do things like a steak or a chicken breast or fish or anything along those lines.
Yeah, thanks. And Thomas, maybe if I can ask you to jump in as well. How's Nature's Fynd tackling this speed, cost, and sustainability dilemma?
So, first of all, I would say whatever Rob and Justin said, plus 15% is what we do. So that's the goal. But more seriously, I think what's fascinating here is we are hearing about various technologies and various approaches that really build on each other in terms of technology. So we all learning together and trying to come up with better solution altogether, which is very exciting. And it's really a testament to the bubbling situation of the industry. And I'm sure, Justin, Gavin, and Rob would agree with me on that. So as far as we're concerned, our technology is a little different. There are, we're cultivating microbes, it's fermentation as well, but we are doing that not through a large scale fermenter. We're doing that through a tray system. So we're really pushing the organism to set itself up at the surface of a liquid and a gas system, and we're creating optimal condition for the growth of our particular organism, which is an extremophile. So there's a few tricks that we can do that are more complicated for other organisms. But one of the things that's interesting in our technology is it enables to have very long undisturbed growth of these filaments. So we get to a very, 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 very long filaments, and we get some interesting texture from that as well. So again, I think there are various ways, various technologies, as some people were commenting on the panel before earlier. I think it's the extraordinary wealth of new technologies coming together that's really going to enable the future here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think bubbling is maybe an understatement of where this particular part of the industry is. It's
that's true.
Yeah, that and
it's fermenting. It's fermenting. Yes.
Maybe if we can stay with this theme of these whole cut products that we've talked a little bit about, and this sort of holy grail, right, of being able to replicate foods like steak and chicken breast, and particularly in the States, it seems like bacon is the sort of ultimate goal for many of us. And it's been pretty challenging to do this well with plants thus far. So maybe if I can start with you again, Justin, can you talk about why creating these products is possible using fermentation technology, and what other kinds of products in this area might be possible in the future through the use of mycelium and biomass fermentation?
You want me to speak on that again? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is specifically related to mycelium fermentation because of the unique structure of mycelium, because of the different ways you can grow mycelium. I mean, we have, people on here either doing submerged or solid state fermentation to replicate those different structures. It can be used in such a variety of different ways and as a tool. And then from there, while we don't process much of the mycelium, it does give you a starting point to work with. It's a very adaptable and formable, unique structure in order to produce kind of these different textures. You can combine with other ingredients if you want to. You can change the chemistries ever so slightly if you're looking at doing that. But it's just mycelium itself, I just can't speak on this enough, is such a unique substrate to start working from.
Yeah, I think that's, thank you. And I think the points that you made there about its sort of malleability, both from how you can grow it, what you grow it on, and what you can turn it into is, I think, what's so powerful about it. And Gavin, I think, I don't know if you can hear me, Gavin, your screen is dark. So it looks like we're having a few technical issues. So maybe, Thomas, I can go to you. I think one of the exciting things that I've seen with Nature's Fynd is just the flexibility of your protein and what you can do with it. So I know that you're not exclusively focused on these whole muscle cut products, but could you talk a little bit about like that sort of flexibility of your system to create different types of tastes and textures?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so as I mentioned earlier, we started our process with an extremophile organism. And so we had to develop this novel fermentation process that works with it. And a big chunk of what we were trying to achieve was a neutrality in taste that enabled us to go across a very wide range of taste as well as a wide range of texture. And so I think, what's fascinating to keep in mind and to build on Justin is that these microorganisms have tremendous capabilities. There are many of them, and as some people were mentioning on the panel earlier, there is many of them, and I think we're really just all of us together scratching the surface on what this is going to be, and we're really building these initial technologies. But we've been able successfully to do a very wide range of product across many animal protein format, as well as dairy protein format. We've been able to include our product also in a range of other food product, pretty much in I wouldn't say everything, but almost everything. So we're able to supplement protein on a lot of things. One of the quick comment I want to make, because I think it's very important for all of us to keep that in mind. We talked earlier about the concentrator, the animal as a concentrator, but I think it's really important to keep in mind that the only organism that really make protein are plants and microorganisms. And animals do not make, we do not make protein. And I know it's something that's very often not fully understood by a consumer, but that's the reality. I think in the context of, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, of global warming and of the population increase, that's a fundamental difference. And I think what we are all doing together is creating this new agriculture that just more efficiently build on this protein. That's really our common goal here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the concept of a new agricultural system is certainly, we'll come back to that and hopefully end there with some predictions of the future. Rob, maybe I can turn briefly to you on this question about these textures and ranges of products. I think what's interesting about Quorn is that you already have a range of products on the market, right? From ground meat to patties to fillets. Does fermentation or microprotein more specifically have specific advantages at being able to create both these sort of simple products and the more complex compared to some of the other technologies being explored?
I think that one of the big advantages is the high-full nature, as I think Justin said earlier. I'm sorry, I was having trouble with my sound and everything was playing back. And one of the advantages is that we can very clearly mimic the muscle fiber. And Quorn does this by binding the hyphae after they've been aligned and then going through a very careful freezing process where the ice crystals force the structure. And this gives us something that's really got the mouth feel of meat. And that's one of the features, as well as the flavor, is this mouth feel, this texture that goes in. And minor variations of that allow us to do a huge variety of different things. So we have everything from sort of fish finger things that we've fairly recently brought on the market, through to the mince and pieces, as we call it, the sort of equivalent of ground meat, mince meat, and chicken pieces, which is the core of what we do. A lot of the nuggets and so on are based around those. But by changing the density, by changing the binders and the heating and cooling processes, we can do an awful lot of other things. And you're right, and we have over 100 different SKUs, and we cover almost any form of meat you could imagine. So everything from the sort of weekend roast through to dippers for the kids and so on. So I think a lot of it comes back. It can be done if you go through an extruder, and people are doing this, and this is where the plant proteins are really being modified. But we've got a much simpler process. It's a much cleaner process. We're not really all that highly processed. If you think about it, we're a white egg. The vegetarian ones are a white egg omelette with a mycelium fillet to give it some texture. So it's quite a simple product. It's quite a clean label from that point of view, which is something that we're very proud of.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think we've certainly all of us have hammered home the point about the flexibility of these microorganisms to create different tastes and textures. Maybe if I can switch gears a little bit and talk about nutrition, because I think this is another advantage of biomass fermentation, is that it's also flexible from a nutritional perspective and quite powerful as well. So Thomas, maybe if I can ask you first, with your sort of nutrition hat on now, how do you think fermentation or what Nature's Fynd is doing might be used to solve problems of undernutrition specifically, particularly in lower income countries?
I think that's a very important question, and I think it's not so much necessarily in the context of emerging countries, but it's really the fact that there is going to be I'm going to repeat things that everyone knows, and we all read the same news, but it doesn't make the problem any more real. There's going to be 10 billion of us. It's going to happen pretty soon, and all of this is happening in the context of global warming, and it makes traditional agriculture, that has been a fantastic technology that has carried us for 11,000 years, it puts traditional agriculture in a context that's very challenging, and it's getting to its limitations. So our friends from the USDA at their research center in Ames did some study where they were basically modeling the conditions of the environmental condition by the end of the century, and trying to grow our regular crops of soy and corn, and they saw drop in productivity, which were around 80-85%. So that really talks to a very, very, very real challenge that we're going to have to deal with. The wonderful thing with fermentation, again, is that we are able to make these proteins regardless of the weather outside. We can do that 365 days, 24 hours a day, and that's a phenomenal advantage. So that really enables us to move forward and continue to feed the planet. In addition to that these 10 billion people are going to live much more in cities, and we know that there is going to be a continuous move towards cities. And what is really exciting with the sort of technology that we have, is that we are here. I'm talking to you here from Chicago. We are in our office and pilot plant here in Chicago. We are literally 10 minutes from downtown Chicago. So you can make these things in cities. You can be very close to consumers, and you can really shorten that logistics supply chain. So you can really do this anywhere, any point in time, very efficiently. And Rob mentioned the fact that, through fermentation, I mean, in our case, we can use about 99% less land, 99% less energy, greenhouse gas emission, and water, about 90% less water. And so I think those are really some fundamental, exciting attributes to fermentation. I think what really matters here is that this problem and these challenges that I mentioned earlier are very real. They're very real. And we're all of us, Justin, Rob, Gavin, all of us, and GFI certainly in this together. This is where we make our stand. This is planet Earth. This is where I live. This is where my kids are going to live. This is where we need to make it work. And I'm very optimistic. I think the solutions are there. We call nature fine because nature has a lot of these solutions. And in fermentation, what we're doing is using these solutions that nature has provided. We're tweaking, we're helping, we're taking a clue from nature, but we're really, I think Rob would agree that it's nature is our number one biotech engineer. Nature is the best biotech engineer. So we're taking a lead from the best here.
Yeah, maybe Rob, if I can switch to you now. I think that was a great segue by Thomas. But as we just talked about, Quorn products are already available in multiple countries around the world. And earlier on in the introductory session, Nate mentioned a study that had been done recently showing some nutritional benefits or advantages of mycoprotein, corn mycoprotein over other sources. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, that, but also how you see that benefiting consumers in lower income countries where they may not have access to, a lot of nutritious protein?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work and over the years, and Quorn mycoprotein has been shown to aid satiety. You feel full sooner and you feel full for longer. So you feel you need to eat less. It aids heart health. That figure that came out that Quorn is twice as good as milk protein for building muscle blew us away. We'd have been happy with equivalent. We weren't being greedy, but to get better was amazing. And there's other gut health, and we're doing a lot of work. And one of the things that we are supporting is life cycle analysis and work into the future of how do we actually feed the planet. And business as usual isn't going to work. We can't have enough millions of acres of soy feeding cattle to do it. We need a spare planet or three to be able to do that. The only way we can do it is by using biomass fermentation to convert cheap and available carbohydrate into nutritious protein sources. The proteins within these mycoproteins, the amino acid profile is every bit as good as the best animal source amino acid profiles and better than plant proteins. So we really need to extend what we do, and we've served, I think, since we came into business in '85, well over 5 billion meals, which is a fairly large number. But our ambition is to do a lot more than that. And so the benefits of scale, bringing the costs down, the benefits of using cheaper, more available carbohydrates in more efficient processes as we develop. My own area is really developing the biotech. As we bring the costs of production down, as we make better capital utilization, the materials become cheaper. They can enter the market at lower price points. They can move into markets that might not be able to sustain even being able to afford chicken. We can go in and be cost effective against these cheaper sources of meat.
Thanks, Rob, and a fun comment from one of the moderators in the background that someone in the audience actually made a corn shepherd's pie about a quarter of an hour ago. So people are eating microprotein while listening to this panel, which is pretty cool. Gavin, welcome back. I'll give you maybe a minute and not throw you right into the discussion, but we're on the topic of nutrition and sustainability. And Justin, maybe I can go to you and I wonder if you've looked specifically at the products you're developing, like the steak, and how it compares nutritionally to a conventional steak or other alternative steaks on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, bring back to just how amazing mycelium is, and I like how Thomas was talking about going back to nature and using that really as a toolbox. You can go back, and we have at our disposal, 140,000 different species of fungi. In fact, that we can actually find one suitable for enhanced nutrition to push really the limits of how we think about nutrition. Within a meaty steak, while it is a complete protein with a PDCAAS score of 1, it's the same kind of levels of protein you would find in animal meat. Over a fifth of your daily fiber, which you're not going to find in animal meat products. A lot of your essential vitamins, over 80% of your daily B12, as well as a lot of other kind of minerals, enhanced potassium, high iron and zinc. It's really incredible when you start looking at, what an amazing food source this is. Again, provided, turned to by nature, really using that as a source of energy for humans. I think it astounds us every day. We learn more about it. And so, I think of it, it's not just fermenting a protein here. It's really more of a whole food source that we're creating here.
Yeah, steak with fiber. I don't think it gets much better than that. Gavin, maybe I can just turn to you briefly before we move into some audience questions. Thomas touched on the ability. We were talking about how sort of using biomass fermentation to provide protein to people around the world, and the sort of the flexibility of the system. I'd love for you to maybe touch a little bit on the modularity of your production system, and the ability to, I think, much like Thomas, build that essentially anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. What we tap into is really mushrooms or fungi's inept ability to basically search a recycling system. They are really adept at basically taking traditionally inedible biomass resources, things like wheat straw or plant seeds and husks, as an example, and transforming those products into nutritious and delicious food sources. For us, we leverage a lot of the same or existing infrastructure that's employed in conventional mushroom farming. And to that end, the infrastructure is already available worldwide, producing billions of mushrooms annually, found everywhere from Auckland, New Zealand to Avondale, Pennsylvania. What we're able to do using our cultivation and farming practices is we unlock the geometry of those same gourmet mushrooms that you would find in a grocery store or at a farmer's market, but we grow them such that when we harvest them, they're larger than a pork belly and thicker than a filet mignon. And similar to what Justin was mentioning earlier, fungi are really adept at enriching themselves. Mushrooms particularly are well known for fostering relationships with plants, sharing nutrients among other organisms within nature itself. And in a similar fashion, we're able to enrich our products with the wide range of necessary and full essential amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, providing products that can be cultivated worldwide and deliver best-in-class texture and nutrition.
Thanks, Gavin. And we've got some really great questions coming in from the audience, and something you said there made me think about one question that came in. I think is great. Is how important is flavor production during biomass fermentation? Does the microorganism have to produce it itself, or are there flavor compounds added during the process or later on? And Gavin, since you were kind of just talking about the ability to add things in, I'll maybe start with you.
Yeah, certainly. So twofold. So first, we tap into what we call the Foragers Secret. So this time of year, foragers go into the forest because there are aptly named mushrooms like chicken of the woods and the lobster mushroom, as an example. They're known for their texture. They're known for their flavors. So in some instances, since our solid state fermentation or farming processes are really strain agnostic, we can adapt a species that is known to have things like flavors similar to seafood or chicken, as an example. The product that we're bringing to market first and foremost, which is a pork alternative, to your point, David, we actually selected a fungus that is really flavor neutral so that we can provide that smoky flavor that's really expected in a bacon alternative.
Thanks, Gavin. And Thomas, a little bit earlier, you talked about the sort of neutral flavor of your the organism and protein you're working with, but are there also opportunities to modify that flavor during the process as well?
To a certain extent, but actually we spend a lot of time trying to get our product to a pretty taste neutral flavor profile, and the goal was really to be able to then use that as a platform that would soak in various flavors, and so that you can go into a lot of different direction and have versatility. You know, the thing with food, whenever we think about our best food, you know, I'm not sure we want to have it every single day for every single meal, right? So being able to have this new protein platform and flavor it, and, you know, come with a variety of flavors that enable you to want to have it and enjoy it at various occasions is something that was very important for us from the get-go. So we really tried to, I know it sounds a little weird to say that you want to be bland in flavor, but the purpose of having this neutrality is really to then play with this sort of flavor piano. And I think that's one of the really interesting aspects of the technology. And I think if you think about some of the plant isolate challenges, you know, and I do believe in crossover and in mixing and matching products, but it is a fact that some plant-based isolate have a very strong taste, and I know formulators sometimes are challenged in food company to cover that. And I think we've been able, and as I'm sure some of, you know, my colleagues here and around the panel, we've been able to get to that neutrality that really unlocks a lot of flavor opportunities. And,
yeah,
and Rob was mentioning some seafood, so, you know, he's not going to disagree with me.
Yeah, I see a lot of nodding.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Rob.
To try and remove some of the flavor, because we've been looking at sort of dairy products, and somehow mushroom and raspberry ripple ice cream hasn't hit the market big yet. So we're very much interested, as Thomas has said, in a neutral, bland thing that we can then add in flavors to act as the core for our various.
Rob, give me a call after that. We know how to do that. I can tell you.
Oh, right. Okay.
There we go.
We're not bad at it.
Very good. Justin, I saw a lot of nodding from you. Anything to add? It sounds like you're very much focused on the sort of neutral flavor as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the state of kind of the fungi-based products right now, I mean, that platform and that diversity is truly amazing. The fact that really now you can flavor it with anything that you can come up with. It's also kind of a chef's dream, if you will. And it doesn't necessarily have to taste like meat. You can make absolutely delicious flavor if you want. It can really be anything. It's just incredibly powerful in that sense as a culinary tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And David, if I may add, I think we are very lucky in the sense that flavors are in the realm of known science and proven science, and there are a lot of people out there that we can turn to that are great experts that can help us bring this profile. And there are great companies to work with, and I'm sure we all working with them. It's our challenge, our collective challenge in fermentation is to bring this new protein platform. That's really what we're focusing on. Unfortunately, there are plenty of people who can help us work on the flavor, and there are great companies out there and great talents.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, on the last panel on traditional fermentation, we had some really great insights about how you can use a different type of fermentation to create really interesting flavor profiles. Maybe one last question from the audience before we wrap up. Moving to sort of side streams and waste byproducts from your various manufacturing processes. How do you plan on utilizing or valorizing those byproducts? Maybe Rob, since you're already at full scale, or maybe not full scale production, but at scale production, you can talk a little bit about how you do that already.
Right. Part of our process, and I suppose part of any bulk process, is that we have to reduce the RNA. Fungi are very rich in RNA, and you can't serve that to the customer more than a very few times a week, whereas I'm sure we're all hoping that it'll be breakfast, lunch and dinner that our product is being eaten. As a consequence, we have a side stream that's very rich in RNA breakdown products, and also a fair amount of protein and small fragments that comes off when we centrifuge out our biomass. And at one time, about a decade ago, we did have a business where we were extracting these flavorings, which are very low in sodium, very rich in umami flavors, and we were getting a few people interested. Unfortunately, the technology wasn't quite with us. Now we're revisiting that because there's a lot of people who are now interested. I've tasted this stuff, and I've had it in sort of soups and gravies and so on by our food sciences R&D, and it can be used almost any way yeast extract has, but it doesn't have the bitter overtones. It's much more mellow and umami and rich than the yeast extract. So we're really looking forward to getting that back on the market, I think, and it's something that we're in the process of redoing at the moment.
So we've already solved the flavoring challenge from the last question with a side stream from your current process. Very cool. Gavin, maybe if I can go to you. I think what's interesting about Atlast, right, is that the parent company has already developed products that are further ahead in terms of the market. Maybe you can talk about Atlast, but more broadly about how you're utilizing side streams and valorizing those, how you're thinking about them in the future.
Yeah, well, certainly. Well, first and foremost, our raw material base, what we feed our organisms and our strains, are byproducts from the conventional agriculture and forestry industry. So we are using things like seed husks and hulls, similar raw materials that you would feed into a mushroom and mushroom cultivation processes. When we grow our products, we're really translocating that nutrition and enriching the mushroom biomass with the nutrition that is available within those agricultural residues specifically. At the end of our process, our limiting nutrient is actually water. So we can water it again, and similar to mushroom cultivation, you can get additional yields or flushes out of it. And thereafter, once it's depleted, it actually is a great soil amendment. And similar to how mushroom farms provide their spent compost as a soil amendment for the agriculture industry, these raw materials can go back to the earth and actually enrich the soil in order to cultivate the next generation of crops.
I love that. That's actually a really nice transition to my last question. We're pretty much done with time. This went very quickly. And so I'd love to leave the last word with all of you. We've heard numerous times today, and even from you, Thomas, about how our current food system is broken. If I could ask you in a minute or less, because we're almost out of time, if you could look 10 years into the future, what role do you think biomass fermentation will be playing in this new food system, this new agricultural system? And Justin, let's start with you.
Well, I know as a goal of the company, and probably a goal of everyone on this panel, to be able to see mycelium, another fungi, as a core protein in the human diet, standing right up there alongside with things like animal-based soy or plant-based. It's looked at in that sort of way. Now, how do we achieve that? Well, I think having the diversity of proteins in our diet is going to be important, and we have to kind of work with everyone in the industry to kind of get to those shared goals.
Love it. Thanks. Rob, your thoughts 10 years in the future?
We have to be much, much, much bigger than we are now. And all of us. It's the only way that we're going to provide, or the human race is going to feed itself into the future and preserve the planet. And I see everybody on this panel expanding enormously, and that'll be both through push from within the companies. Obviously every company wants to expand, but also there's going to be a fantastic pull from the consumers as they realize, as hopefully we tell them, just what the benefits are, both in sustainability, in health, and all the other aspects that we've been discussing about why this is so good. So we need to be big.
Thanks, Rob. Gavin, your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly. Well, looking into the future, we think that it's really important to both respect while learning from the past of our agricultural practices, right? And to that end, we are working with several future-looking mushroom cultivators and farmers in order to assist in the scale as well as the delivery of our products long-term. In the future, we look to foster additional collaborations around the world in order to cultivate nutritious and delicious products using byproducts from conventional agriculture to transform those into new protein sources that are delicious and compelling for any carnivore.
Thanks. And Thomas, maybe if I can leave the last words with you, 10 years from now, what do you think our food system is going to look like?
As I mentioned earlier, I really think, and I'm just going to repeat some of the things that Justin, Rob, and Gavin said earlier. I really think this is a new part of agriculture. This is the agriculture of the future, and it is just a way more efficient way of making these proteins that we all need. There is no, it's not open for debate. It's just a fact. The math this is the only way the math add up, so that you don't have an entire continent dedicated to growing cows. It's just the way it is. And I think in 10 years from now, you'll have nutritional fungi protein everywhere. I absolutely convinced of that. I think it will be part of menus. You will see nutritional fungi protein on menus. You will see that as part of your food. We all talked about the versatility and the amount of products. Rob was mentioning is more than 100 SKUs. I mean, the versatility, the flexibility. Sure, we're all going to have to continue to push the technology, develop, invent. That's what we all do, all of us here. But that's what we enjoy doing. I think it's important that we do that in a collaborative way. As I think, I'm not sure if it's Justin or Gavin who was mentioning that, but it's gonna take a lot of people. It's gonna take a lot of solution. It's gonna take a lot of fertilization of ideas. It's gonna take a lot of that. I mean, we're really at the beginning of this new era. So think about it. When the automobile was invented, there were, I don't know, hundreds of car makers in their garage trying to invent new cars. I think this is a little bit of where we are right now. This is like the beginning of the airplane area, where everyone is trying to figure out a new way of doing things. That's very exciting. It's a very exciting space. There is no question.
I couldn't have said it any better. What a fantastic discussion. Just thank you so much to Justin, Thomas, Rob, and Gavin, and thank you to the audience as well for all the wonderful questions and chat in the background. With that, we're done with the session. Panelists, you're all free to go. Click on the little button, red button up on the right, and I will see everyone shortly.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So just want to recap a few things from that panel before we dive into our final session of the day. So our last panel was on whole biomass fermentation and left me feeling particularly hopeful and excited about the role that type of fermentation will play in the alternative protein industry and the entire food system going forward. I think we heard, mycelium is a really interesting and promising ingredient. It's actually referred to as a self-assembling material. And it really allows for a fast, efficient, flexible, and dare I say, easy process. A few other quotes that really kind of stuck with me throughout the discussion. Thomas said, all we need to make proteins is plants and microorganisms. Animals aren't needed. And Rob really kind of echoing why we're hosting this symposium and why we're so excited about fermentation, business as usual won't work. Some other interesting tidbits, that how this technology really allows us to effectively mimic muscle fiber, really to achieve the holy grail of plant-based or animal-free products like steak, which I know Meati Foods is working on and talked a little bit about. And thinking about the nutritional content of that steak, not only do you get the same protein you would in an animal. And then finally, kind of the last thing I'll really point out was the mention of the USDA's environmental study of environmental conditions by the end of the century and how that will impact the ability to grow corn and soy. And they saw that there could be an 80 to 85% drop in productivity, which is really just staggering. And I think highlights the importance of using fermentation to be able to feed a growing planet, while we're dealing with climate change.